Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Vihari.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Welcome back to another interview on the importance of reading Srila Prabhupada's books, organized by the ISKCON Ministry of Education. Books are the basis, and we are very honored today to have with us His Holiness Bhakti Vigna Vinasa Narasimha Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's wonderful. Maharaj, just to give you a short introduction, Maharaj, originally from the UK, was initiated by Srila Prabhupada in 71 in London and accepted the renowned sort of sannyas in 1994 in Mayapur from His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami, and has been preaching especially in the Asian countries such as India, Philippines, China, Taiwan, Singapore, and has been usually based in Bangkok or Hong Kong, and at the moment is in Mayapur Dham. And Maharaj is also serving as an initiating spiritual master, and he also serves as a teacher at the Mayapur Institute for many, many years, actually from the very beginning of the Institute. So yeah, wonderful to have you with us, Maharaj. We're looking forward to hear your realization on this important topic.
Thank you. Yes, it is an important topic. We do want to encourage people to read the books. That's the beginning for their Krishna consciousness, I think.
Well, that's already a powerful statement. Like, books are the basis, so it's the beginning, yeah, to start with. We will talk about the importance. Maybe we can start with your story, Maharaj. What was the first book that you received? Do you remember? And how did you join the movement then afterwards? Or?
Well, I think the first magazine, it was a magazine I saw Back to Godhead magazine. When I was a student, I was studying, I was in the university studying, I was an engineering student, actually. And someone brought this Back to Godhead magazine with Lord Nrsingadev on the cover.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
It was really, yeah, I was really captivated. You know, I was certainly attracted. At that time, things from the East were considered very hip or very spiritual. So I was really interested in the things from the East, particularly India, and, you know, Indian music was very popular, Ravi Shankar, and the Beatles were they were associating with the Maharishi and like that. So when I saw the Back to Godhead, I thought it was really wonderful. I didn't actually get into reading it. I just got to look at it. The first book I actually read was a small pamphlet called The Topmost Yoga System. Actually, I graduated from college and I was working in a job in London. And so one Saturday I went shopping and I purchased a book called Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It was originally very beautiful silver cover, and it had that beautiful picture of Radha and Krishna on the cover. And inside, of course, so many beautiful color plates. And I saw the introduction was by George Harrison. And I thought, oh, this is really interesting. And so I purchased a copy of the book, and it wasn't even from a bookstore. It was just like what we would call it a head shop, you know, something like that. They sell incense and everything. And so anyway, I purchased the book and took it home and showed my friend. And my friend said, oh, he said, I have a book by the same person. So he looked through his books and he came out with The Topmost Yoga System. So we were really impressed that, wow, both books by the same author. We thought very interesting, you know, that should look into this. So he gave me the topmost yoga system, and I spent the night reading through it, and I was really impressed that I'd been reading a lot of other books by different teachers, and I was looking for a teacher. I was interested in spirituality, but I hadn't taken initiation from anybody. Some of my friends were initiated into different walks. I hadn't gone into anything, but I was looking. I was a searcher. I was a seeker of the truth. And after I read Topmost Yoga System, I felt that this is something which is really genuine, which I felt I really understood what the author was saying, and I definitely wanted to find out more and know more about it. And so that actually led me to go to visit the temple. They had opened a small center there in London at that time. And I'd been meaning to go to the center. I used to purchase incense, which the devotees manufactured. And on the incense packet, it always said, come to the temple, and we have sunrise meditation and a love feast on Sunday. And I thought, oh yeah, I must go, but I never went. But after I read the book, after I read that Topmost Yoga System, then I thought, I really have to go. Although I'd purchased the Krishna book, I read the Topmost Yoga System, and it was so inspiring. I thought it's really relevant to my life, and I went to the temple, and I attended the program and met the devotees, and all the devotees were young people, all about, I was like 21, and they were about my age, and they were young people, and they were all from England. They were all British people, except, there was one little older Indian man who turned out to be Swami. So he joined there in London. So I was impressed because I thought, wow, even an Indian has joined this.
This must be authentic, no? This must be.
Yeah. I thought, wow, even the Indian people joined something different, So I started to go regularly, and I really took to Krishna. I enjoyed it. I ended up becoming devotee.
And I mean, these were the very early days of the London temple also. And can you share what was the mood? I mean, of course, there was a lot of Sankirtan and preaching, I guess, but how many books were there at that time? And what was the culture of reading in these early days?
Well, 1971, we didn't have a lot of books, There was maybe a couple of crates of the hardcover Krishna book, Volume 1. Volume 2 hadn't yet come out, but Volume 1 hardcover Krishna book was there. Bhagavad Gita we were using, it was the abridged Macmillan version with no Sanskrit. So there were only a few copies of that. We didn't have many copies of Macmillan Bhagavad Gita. There was not many copies of Ishopanishad. And we were using Prabhupada's Indian Bhagavatam, the first 3 volumes. That was the books. That's what we were using in the beginning. So we had some Back to Godhead crates of, sometimes they would ship a few crates of Back to Godhead magazines from, I think from Japan. They were printed in Japan at one point, and they would print a few crates of them and send them to London, and that was how we would support the temple. We would go out and distribute these Back to Godhead magazines, and sometimes we tried to sell a big book if we could, but it was, we thought, very difficult, So we didn't have a lot of books, but there was a nice mood that we did because we were doing, the devotees who were living in the temple were all full-time devotees. So we had regular programs to read, and one, especially we would read Bhagavatam in the morning, Prabhupada's Indian Bhagavatam, and we would also read the Ishopanishad, and we would recite all the mantras of Ishopanishad and read a mantra of Ishopanishad. And then we would go out on Sankirtan and after come back for lunch, and after lunch, then again we'd have a Krishna book reading. And we would read the Krishna book. We had copies of the Krishna book, so we were able to read that okay. And then in the evening, then it would be Bhagavad Gita and Nectar of Devotion. So like that, we had a nice program, a lot of time. The devotees were new, we didn't know very much, so, if you asked a question, you wouldn't be sure if the answer was authoritative or not, The devotees were all young, and not all of them were so well educated, but it was fun. There was it was a nice mood. The devotees were happy living together, and we shared everything. We shared our clothes, our dhotis and everything. Dhotis in those days, it was just some bed sheet, piece of cloth. We didn't have anything very real. Anyway, we were living happily, very joyfully, and the center was really definitely Krishna. We were fortunate in London at that time. We'd already installed Radha Landaneshwara, and we had these big, beautiful marble deities there. And every day there was kirtan, morning and evening. We had nice kirtan, and we had. Then gradually more and more books started to come. In the beginning, after the first volume, Bhagavatam came out, then they began to print the second canto, chapter by chapter. So one chapter of the second canto came out, and we were trying to read it. But, Bhagavatam we found a bit difficult. We really didn't know too much about what was going on in the Bhagavatam. But Krishna book was nice. We enjoyed hearing the Krishna Leela. Prabhupada wrote that Krishna book, for everyone. He mentions this book is good for three kinds of people, that people who are already perfect in Krishna consciousness, they'll take pleasure in hearing about Krishna. People who are trying to become perfect, they'll get great benefit by hearing these pastimes. And people who are not even devotees, they will also benefit. They will enjoy hearing this lila because so many nice pastimes are there, so many different topics. There's romance, and there's war stories, and there's crime stories, and every different kind of mood is there in the Krishna book. And so we enjoyed reading Krishna book. We enjoyed trying to understand the other books. Reading, Nectar of Devotion also, it was difficult for us. It is something of it's like a whole new language coming into Krishna consciousness. When you get these books, it's not that we can immediately enter into them. And that's why I feel that the courses which we're presenting in ISKCON are really very important and very helpful. We have our Bhakti Shastri and everything. I think that really helps a lot for the devotees in bringing people into Krishna consciousness. You want them to understand the philosophy. If they understand the philosophy, then it's much less likely that they'll go away. So it's really important that they should have the opportunity to understand and hear. And I think that's one of the unique benefits which we have in ISKCON over other societies, other institutions, that we really go all out there trying to educate our devotees and to teach them the philosophy and to understand what's in these scriptures. I think also the disciple course, that nowadays we have also ISKCON disciple course. I think that's also very helpful in the beginning, bringing people in. Lets people know a little bit what's expected of a devotee, that we're expected to know the philosophy. As Prabhupada said, he said, I didn't write my books just for you to sell. I wrote them for my devotees to read. So it's really important for us to read, but then there's quality in reading. It's not just, like they have a reading club and you sit and read. And after the reading is over, if you ask people, well, what did you learn? They don't have a lot. They didn't pick up much. So reading the books is good, but we want to do more than just simply, it's not just a reading exercise, but we want to enter into the spirit of the book, to understand everything which is actually being introduced to us within these books. And not just only understand, but then we want to put it into practical application, that we can apply it, that we live it. So that's the wonderful thing about Prabhupada's books, that it's not just some book which you read and put down and keep on your bookshelf. Oh yeah, I read it, But it's a way of life. You're supposed to enter into it. You're supposed to apply what's there in the book. And this is really important for us as devotees, that first we have to begin with ourselves, that we ourselves have to apply what's in the book. And the more we read the books and apply what's in the book, the more we can experience how wonderful the books are and how much wonderful knowledge is there. And then we will want to share it also with others. We're eager to give it to others and to bring them into Krishna consciousness.
So wonderful to hear about these early days also, that mood of reading that was already there. And as you just beautifully explained, the importance of reading and educating the devotees, that they know what Krishna consciousness means. Maybe we can start with this point that you already spoke about, the importance of reading, but why would you say it is important that devotees read daily, like a regularly reading practice? What is the significance of this daily reading?
Well, it's like everything else, that whatever you do, you want to, if you're trying to develop something, you have to practice it regularly. If you get in the habit of doing something regularly, then it's so much easier for us to develop the skill. Just like people do things like, well, let's say you learn a language, you want to learn a foreign language, you want to practice using it as often as possible. And if you practice it, it's just like if you have a class every day, you yourself maybe living in Switzerland, people speak, German there, or another part they speak French, but, then they also want to know some English. And so if you practice using the English regularly, then it becomes more natural and much easier to use. So similarly, reading Prabhupada's books, if we get in the habit of reading Prabhupada's books, of hearing Prabhupada's books, and of course, Prabhupada's ISKCON society was arranged in such a way that people who lived in the society, they would have that opportunity, that even if they didn't themselves read, at least they would hear, because hearing is reading. We asked Prabhupada, I was in London one time, we actually asked Prabhupada about that if we actually hear the class, is that the same as reading? Prabhupada said yes. He said, if you go to class and you hear the class, that's as good as reading. You're hearing what is in the books, because of course the speaker should be authorized. They should be repeating what is heard, what is understood from Prabhupada's books. So hearing is really the basis of the beginning of our Krishna consciousness, right? In the Bhagavad Gita, 7th chapter, Krishna says, now hear from me, O Arjuna. How? By practicing yoga. After Krishna had described the yoga ladder, and that Bhakti is at the top of the yoga ladder, and then the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita begins with Krishna saying to Arjuna, now hear from me. So it's really all about hearing. So when we read, it's actually hearing, and we're hearing from Prabhupada, because the books are written by Prabhupada. It's Prabhupada's words, and Srila Prabhupada himself would take pleasure in hearing the books. He would have devotees, sometimes in Los Angeles, they would sit there and read Krishna book to them. And Prabhupada would enjoy. He would say, I have not written these books, Krishna has written them through me. So hearing the book, reading together, hearing these books, it's something which we have to develop the taste for. And if we lived in the ISKCON society, I've been fortunate, I joined at a time when the society was really based in the ashram. And we all lived together, and we all sat in class. We would go to classes, and we would sit in here, and we would ask questions, and there would be discussions. And this is the real business, this is the life of the devotee. That you come together, you sit down, and you discuss Krishna consciousness. One person would speak, and then the other persons will hear, and they will inquire, and they will share their realizations. So it's really important for us to get that opportunity. I think today the problem is a lot of people are not living in the ashrams. You know, they live outside, okay, but because they don't live in the ashrams, they don't always hear classes as we do in the temple. The temples, of course, nowadays also the temples, the classes are not as common as they used to be. We used to have, as I said, when I joined, we had several classes. Nowadays, you get a Bhagavatam class, and you may be lucky, a Bhagavad Gita class in the evening. Not always, but anything else is exceptional. So we do want to encourage the devotees hearing. And people not living in the temple, they have that. And of course, nowadays, most of our members are not living in the temple, so they have that responsibility themselves. They have to read Prabhupada's books, they have to hear about Krishna. It's really important. I always encourage devotees, keep a book with you. Carry a book with you wherever you go. And then, because you never know when you're going to get time to sit down and open the book and to read something. You know, you're waiting in a line or something, or you go on a bus, you sit in the bus, and you can take the book out and read it. Right. Just to have a book with us is very important. You know, I always encourage devotees, keep a book with you wherever you go, so that, and then try to always think about getting in the habit of opening it and reading it. Don't just keep it in your bag. It's nice to have it with you in your bag, but you got to read it. You got to take it out. You got to open it and read it. And you can read aloud as well. Let people hear. Keshava Bharati Maharaj is always preaching about reading aloud, you know. That's good, very nice. Everybody hears. Just like when we chant loud. More people hear, they get the benefit. So you read Prabhupada's books, it's very beneficial to people. Let them hear about Krishna.
Yeah, I think that's a powerful point, that actually also the congregation members and devotees, when they come together, it would be nice to create this cult that we just take a book and read a few pages and then discuss. You know, like make that as a kind of a standard way to associate also with each other.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, this is what association is all about. And this is what's lacking sometimes in our society, that we think association means talking about the family, talking about the economy, talking about the job situation. But the real association, real sadhu sangha, is discussing topics of Krishna. And the best way to initiate it is by reading them, taking the books out and reading them. Sharing something from Prabhupada's books, sharing them with the devotees. It's enlivening to do that. And people come to the temple, actually, they want that. When they come to our temples, they're actually looking for that kind of association. They've come to our temple, they've come to hear. The real mission in coming to our temple, that they want to hear, they've come to hear something. So we have a lot to say, you know, we're not short of topics. We have so much to share with people. We have so many nice books. And even if we don't know much ourselves, you can just read. As you say, just take the book and read. You don't have to speak yourself. You can just read. Read what Prabhupada says and say, this is what Prabhupada says. And let them hear. And then people also have their thoughts. Also, then you can discuss with them. So Prabhupada encourages us. They said that actually even more important than reading is sharing or preaching and discussing and enlightening one another. That when we come together, if we just read and then close the book, and then okay, finish, but what we want to do is actually discuss what is mentioned in the book, what is brought up, what is Prabhupada saying, what are the points which are being made there within the book. It's important for us as devotees. I see also the Bhakti Briksha program is very good in that regard, Bhakti Briksha, because they encourage people to bring up points, new points, what did you not understand? Because sometimes people read the book and they say, oh, it's very deep, I couldn't understand it. Sometimes philosophical, in Sanskrit and the words, some of the words, like we're coming from European culture, we're not Hindu origin, so we're not brought up in that Hindu society. So a lot of the words we're not so familiar with. It's new for us in the beginning. And it does take some adjustment to get used to. And Prabhupada's way of writing, he has special ways of describing things, like who else talks about unalloyed devotion? Where do you hear this? Unalloyed, the use of that unalloyed is very, very wonderful. How Prabhupada would do this, how he could take these words and bring them into Krishna consciousness to give them a very transcendental meaning. So it's a little challenging in the beginning. And Prabhupada also said, when he first went to hear his own Guru Maharaj, he could not understand. He said he could not understand, but he did not go away. That's the point. So that it's important, people may come. We want to make it understandable for them. No, we want to keep their interest. So that is important. So sometimes we do have to be able to explain the content of the book in a simpler language. Some parts of Prabhupada's books are quite difficult, quite philosophical. Like second canto Srimad Bhagavatam can be quite deep, there's a lot of philosophy there. It's not so easy for people. Srimad Bhagavatam, quite philosophical. Sometimes people, they like Leela more, So parts of Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a lot of Leela in Chaitanya Charitamrita there. And Srimad Bhagavatam also, Leela is there, but they have to be brought through it. It has to be explained to them step by step. And that's why I find that teaching these courses, like we have after Bhakti Shastri, we have Bhakti Vaibhav, and go through each chapter by chapter, and let the devotees actually digest what is being taught, what is Srila Vyasadeva presenting here, what's going on. Because it can be quite bewildering for people. It's not such an easy topic to enter into. Srimad Bhagavatam, it's a postgraduate study, it's a graduate study, right? Chaitanya Charitamrita postgraduate. But it's the fruit of all the Vedas. So it's really sometimes challenging for people to read.
So, as we mentioned, you yourself have been a teacher for many years, and you're emphasizing now this point of reading together in the association of devotees, and especially under the guidance of a teacher. like someone who can explain the Shastra also. And so when we have these systematic studies in ISKCON, there is a different study aims also, different aims that we have when we study. And maybe we can talk about some of these aims. One of them is to understand Srila Prabhupada's mood and mission better, right?
Okay.
And
yeah.
Yeah, and also it's interesting that Prabhupada actually made a point that whatever I've written in my books should be taken as personal instruction. So like when we read Prabhupada's books, actually Prabhupada is talking to us. And do you like to share some realization how by reading we come closer to Prabhupada and understand his mood and mission?
Well, definitely, yeah. I mean, as a devotee, although I was initiated by Srila Prabhupada, I can't say I had intimate association with Prabhupada. I didn't really get the opportunity to spend much personal time with Prabhupada. Mainly, I just sit in classes and hear Prabhupada's classes. But reading Prabhupada's books certainly helps us to understand more Prabhupada's, as you said, his mood and mission. What is Prabhupada? And that's also brought out very much in Prabhupada's introduction. For example, introduction in the Nectar of Devotion, an introduction also in Bhagavad Gita, where Prabhupada talks about something of his mood, his mission in presenting this Bhagavad Gita. For example, he said that Prabhupada's mood was, if even one person becomes a pure devotee, then I'll consider it successful. And he said also that there's so many other editions of Bhagavad Gita. Why we need another one? But because he said they didn't touch on the real spirit of the Bhagavad Gita. So Prabhupada has a very special spirit. You know, I tried to read Bhagavad Gita also as a student, and I didn't understand anything. You know, I had some edition, not Prabhupada, some other edition. I couldn't understand what it was all about. But after I went to the temple there in London, and I sat in the class, and one of the young devotees was giving a class on Bhagavad Gita, then I understood what he was saying. But reading the Bhagavad Gita, some scholarly edition of Bhagavad Gita, I didn't understand what it was all about. And reading even Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, have to read it many times before we can actually really know what is happening, what's going on, what the different points which are taking place there in the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. So Prabhupada's purports are so important. It's not just the translations. One of our devotees here in Mayapur was making the point recently that the translation from Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita and the translation from some Mayavadi Bhagavad Gita may be the same, but the purports are very different. And that's the point. And so if you read the Bhagavad Gita without the purports, you could go really off track. You may say, oh, Bhagavad Gita, but if we don't read the purport, which is Prabhupada's real ecstasy, which is coming there in the purport. And it's so important for us to hear from Prabhupada. Without reading these purports, we would never know what's going on in these books. It's so relevant, it's so important for us. So Prabhupada really understood, of course, perfectly. He knew that in the future, these books would be there and he's not going to be there. And he put every effort into writing these books. So I always consider that by reading these books, this is how I get my association with Prabhupada. And Prabhupada also encouraged us like that. You know, and in Prabhupada's time, there were a few senior devotees, you know, and they kept us away from Prabhupada. They said, don't disturb Prabhupada. Keep away, you know, they made sure Prabhupada didn't get disturbed because they know Prabhupada has to translate, he has to write his books. And by writing his books, he's writing for all the devotees. So I was brought up with that understanding that these books, this is how we associate with Prabhupada. And my association with Prabhupada has always been through his books. So I've always thought like that these books are directly coming from Prabhupada.
What would you advise devotees? What would be the proper attitude to actually enter into that mood of meeting Prabhupada in his books? Like you have explained how that was always how you experience it. Of course, you personally met Prabhupada, you listened from Prabhupada, but for us, the next generation, what is the proper mood to enter into this understanding that Prabhupada is actually there in his books?
I was remembering there was in New York, the temple president from New York, he got a letter from Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was telling him, you should cram my purports. Prabhupada used the expression to cram my purports, cram. You know, before an examination, we would often cram for the exam. It means like stay up all night or something to prepare for the exam the next morning. You know, it's like doing some last minute studying or something. And so Prabhupada used that expression to describe how we should study his books. He said, you should cram my purports. So if devotees can somehow pick up on what of the value of Prabhupada's purports, then this will really help them to fully embrace what is actually there in these books and how Prabhupada's mood is there in each and every purport. We do want to encourage the devotees to come closer to Prabhupada. We do teach, for example, in the disciple course, that everybody can have a personal relationship with Prabhupada. And how can you have that personal relationship? It actually comes particularly through Prabhupada's books. Of course, you could say, well, Prabhupada's kirtan, and you could say Prabhupada's deity, you could say Prabhupada's temples. Yes, but especially the books, because these other things are not always, it's the books which are more easily available, constantly available, and many different books as well, not just one book. And Prabhupada wrote voluminous, you know, the whole Srimad, the practically a bit of the 10th canto Srimad Bhagavatam, the whole Chaitanya Charitamrita, the whole Nectar of Devotion, the whole Bhagavad Gita, and then also we have Ishopanishad, Nectar of Instruction. These books, these are all scriptures which Prabhupada translated. Other small books he also wrote, like Easy Journey to Other Planets. Prabhupada wrote it before he went to the West. So Prabhupada's writing, Prabhupada, when he was writing, he was always meditating on all of us, that we're the fallen conditioned souls. And he was thinking about how to present this knowledge in such a way that these conditioned souls can be brought out of their illusion and come to Krishna consciousness. Just like Prahlad Maharaj is always thinking about the welfare of the conditioned souls and how to deliver them. So Srila Prabhupada had that same mood in presenting his books, that he's thinking how to give everything he can for our benefit to save us from material life. For example, that first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which Prabhupada printed in India before he'd even gone to the West. Prabhupada was reflecting that I may never get the chance to write any more books again. I may never get the opportunity. I may never get the money. Prabhupada was already 70 and he's writing this first canto Srimad Bhagavatam, and he has to get the money, how to get the money to get it printed. And of course, it was letterpress printing. He had to spend so many hours for so many days and months checking manuscripts and trying to make sure the book would be properly printed. And Prabhupada thought, well, he was writing it. He wants to put as much information as he can into that volume, into every volume, because he's never sure if he'll ever get the chance to write another book. So he tries, his purports are extensive, and they're really clear, and they're really meaningful. They're real gems. They're the most valuable jewels, because Prabhupada wanted to give us everything he had to help us to come into Krishna consciousness. And that was his mood in writing his books. That these books are going to travel. They're going to go, they'll come into the hands of so many conditioned souls. And he wants that they should be saved. So therefore Prabhupada was thinking like that while he was writing, to put everything he knew, everything he could possibly say, everything he could possibly say to convince us to take up this Krishna consciousness. So it's so important for us to really reflect on the importance of Prabhupada's books and the value of Prabhupada's books. And it's so nice being involved with the Institute here and seeing how we're able to present these courses, and people from all over the world are taking interest also to study. And we're now, of course, these courses are being put into local languages also, and it's very nice. And within the local language, more and more people coming forward, particularly here in India. Although Prabhupada's mission was Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachadis for the Western world, but we're seeing how it's also it's coming alive very much in India, and the people in India also fully attracted to Krishna consciousness, and they also come in big numbers for our courses. Very popular. They want to study because they never had the opportunity before. Nobody else was teaching them. They would read the books, but they wouldn't always understand what is the message and what's the points. So it's really helpful for them when we have a course, they have a teacher, and to guide people through it, and then they can go deeper in their own reading themselves. And I encourage people who take the course that after you study the course, then your duty is to teach it to others, that you become a teacher yourself. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also said, become a teacher and save the world. Everyone should become a teacher. And so this is gradually happening. We need more and more teachers. More and more people are becoming teachers. Courses are going on. More and more people gradually understanding the value of Prabhupada's books. Once they understand the content, then they will value the book more, and they'll be more inclined to read it and to reflect on what they heard. That's my opinion, that the more they can actually understand what's here in Prabhupada's books and the different points which Prabhupada has made, then they will appreciate the book more and they will read it more deeply themselves.
Mm. Yeah, you very beautifully highlighted Prabhupada's mood also in a sense of his compassion. Like that there was a certain urgency with Prabhupada. He really wanted to share what he had.
Oh,
and that compassion. That's such a beautiful point. Yeah, maybe we spoke about the importance. Maybe we coming to a close, we could talk a little bit about the study also. Sometimes devotees face difficult obstacles in actually reading. Would you like to share some tips? How can we develop a taste? I mean, it's obvious you shared beautifully your enthusiasm for reading, but how do devotees develop such a taste? And what can we do to overcome obstacles like having not too much time or no lack of inspiration or concentration while reading? What would be some advices from your side?
Well, I think it's good for people to take up a responsibility to come and give classes now and again. You know, senior devotees, people who've been around a long time, you know, they should be regularly giving a class. They should come and speak. People who are initiated, at least initiated, or even better, even twice initiated, then they have a duty to speak and to present classes. I think that in itself gives you the impetus to read more, because you think, well, I have to speak. I have to look over what to say, you know, and to do more preaching. I remember one devotee, we were going preaching, and he thought, oh, let me look over the book first. I have to find something to preach about before we go preaching. So if you're going out preaching and talking to people about Krishna consciousness, then you want to be able to say something. And you want to say something which is authoritative. So it's nice to look through Prabhupada's books, and to actually, you'll find everything is there in Prabhupada's books. When we open the books, immediately something will be there, it will hit you. Because that's the nature of these books, that these books are dynamic. They're not mundane novels. Mundane novels, you know, you read the English literature or something, you know, it's a bit dry. But Prabhupada's books are transcendental. They're dynamic. The more we look through it, the more we will see inspiration and realization. And this is very valuable. So I think it's important for us to encourage devotees to preach and to take up the responsibility. Come and give a class now and again. Come and share whatever you know. It's important, even if they know, they may not like to speak so much, but we should be going to classes, we should go and hear, and we should ask questions, we should get involved in discussions. So ISKCON are helpful. ISKCON is coming together and discussing Krishna conscious philosophy. So getting devotees together to hear and chant, to discuss this knowledge of Krishna consciousness. This is what will encourage people to read more. Because if you go to sometimes you go to a class and the devotee is speaking something, you think, well, I never heard this before. Where did he get this? You know, that this is something new for me. And then you realize somebody's read something you didn't read. We haven't read well, we haven't read carefully, so we missed something. But some devotee picked up something, and you understand, I have to do more reading myself. I have to be more careful in my own reading. So it's important to get people engaged in distributing the knowledge of Krishna consciousness. To get them to just tell people about Krishna. Now, of course, it's difficult. You could say people they have to work. Okay, yeah, everybody's working. Everybody has to maintain their life. We have to think also. But our life has to be we have to have some spiritual substance to our life as well. It's not just only solving the economic problems. The economic issues, that's our karma. But devotional service is transcendental. If we encourage people in their devotional service, they can transcend their karma and they can feel blissful, whatever condition they're in materially. So we do want people to just try to feel that Prabhupada is there, and Prabhupada wrote these books for us, even though you may not be directly Prabhupada's disciple, but Prabhupada was thinking about you, and Prabhupada wrote these books for generations to come, that they could all share in this knowledge. So we do want people to read the books. We try our best and distribute them. Nowadays also we have e-books, one devotee was asking me, because they like to mark the book, you know, when they study, they like to underline things, but they didn't like to do it on Prabhupada's book. So I said, okay, get the e-book, you know, you get the e-book, then you can put your line there and you can always change it afterwards, you know, it's not a big problem. That's one of the advantages of having the digital version of Prabhupada's books. You know, being in this old body myself, you know, the digital version, I can make the font bigger and I can read it much easier, you know. Read the books, the fonts are a bit small and sometimes faint, sometimes the printing's not done very well and the type is not very good. But if I have the soft copy, then I can read I can put it on the screen and I can make the font bigger. It's much easier to read, and I can mark it also. I can put lines there and put colors in to remind me of different points which are there in different places. So Prabhupada liked us to actually know everything. He said he didn't think, you know, if you walk into the class with a big armful of books, he didn't think that was very good. If you can't, you know, you bring all this book and that book said, you know, he said, whatever the book says, he said, you should know it. We should know it, you know, we should memorize, we should have it memorized. You can't just walk into the class with an armful of books and pick up different references, you know. That's not really how it should be. It should be there. We should know it. We should know it well, and we should be able to speak it. But in preparation, you know, we do need to read. We need to look carefully. Just like lawyers, right? The lawyers, they have their cases. So Prabhupada was talking with that professor from Berkeley, and they were discussing about having a Krishna conscious club in the University of California, Berkeley. And the professor from Asian Studies had written to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada wrote back. You can see those letters. They're in the book, Science of Self-Realization. So it's a very nice correspondence. And Prabhupada's quoting different references from the scriptures. And the professor says, oh, well, you can always, you know, I have my references, you have your references. But we should know these references. I remember when I was a new devotee, it happened, there was somehow a reporter had come to the temple, and I was just a new devotee, and somehow this reporter was speaking to me, and I didn't know anything, you know, and I was just talking things, I was saying things which, you know, which people, devotees shouldn't really say, which, you know, I was talking things I was giving my own ideas, my own speculative ideas. So somehow this reporter, he wrote an article and he put some of the things I'd said, and Prabhupada read the article and said, what is this? He said, our devotees should know the philosophy. They said they should not speak all this nonsense. So it's so important for us. If we haven't read Prabhupada's books, if we don't know the philosophy, then when we get questioned on it, then we won't know what to say. So it's really important for us. We do have to know. We have to read Prabhupada's books. We have to hear regularly. And if we don't hear regularly, we'll forget. It dries up. Just like the example, the clay pot and the water in the clay pot, the water will evaporate out the clay pot in course of time. So the same way, our knowledge, if we don't use it, if we're not speaking it out regularly, then that same knowledge will dry up. We need to, therefore, whatever we've understood from the scriptures, we have to speak it, we have to use it. Hanumat Prasad Swami, very nice devotee, wonderful devotee. He inspires me a lot. He said something. He said, "You don't need to know a lot, but you have to use what you know. That's important." I thought that really makes sense. I really agree with that. We don't need to know a lot. And Prabhupada said, you don't need to read a lot of books. Just read Prabhupada's books. It's all there in Prabhupada's book. But you have to use what you know. That's very important. Make a use of what you know. And how to use it, you preach, you tell people about it. Just like we memorize slokas. If you don't use them regularly, you'll forget them. You have to use them. You have to recite them. So we're trying to encourage devotees like that, try to create the Krishna conscious atmosphere by that kind of katha. Satam prasanga mama virya sambido bhavanti ridkarana rasayana katha. Topics of Lord Krishna, when heard in the association of devotees, is very pleasing to the ear and to the heart. So that's one thing, in this association of devotees. But even not devotees, try to speak something. Find something of interest to people, to bring them, to awaken them to Krishna consciousness. This is our duty as devotees.
So through the sharing Krishna consciousness, we also become more enthusiastic to study deeper. And maybe coming towards the closing, you also emphasized the importance of application. That you mentioned at the beginning how this book are meant that we actually live according to this knowledge, that we apply ourselves. Would you like to just address the devotees on this point, in a sense of, how do we do that? How we manage to the theoretical knowledge, make it Vigna, make it a realized knowledge, and live according to what we understand?
Yes, well, that's you could say that's a challenge, a great challenge for all of us as devotees, and that we don't just simply read. We don't want to just be a parrot that we just repeat whatever we read from the books, but we want to actually realize it. We want to understand it and to use it and apply it in our life. So we have to constantly be checking ourselves. How much am I using this? You could say this is a ongoing process, that we're looking at ourselves and we're looking, how much am I applying this knowledge? Am I doing what I preach? We talk about reading Prabhupada's books regularly. Am I reading enough? As Prabhupada says in the Bhagavatam, devotees of the Lord, they're so busy, they don't have enough time to do all the service they have to do. There's so many books to read. There's I have so many books, but new books coming out, people give you a copy, just to get time to sit down and read it. It's a challenge because there's always so many things. There's so many classes to be done. There's so many people to meet and different events taking place you're asked to participate in. It's a real challenge. But we have to always be thinking how to apply Krishna, keep ourselves in Krishna consciousness, keep the mind controlled. The very first step in Bhakti Yoga is controlling the mind, right? Maharaj Ambarish, Savaimana Krishna Padara. So fixing the mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. So this is important for us, that we want to remember Krishna in everything we do. We need to understand that I'm doing this for the pleasure of Krishna. I want to please Krishna. It's not just a question of my pleasure, but it's what pleases Krishna. And if we cannot understand how to please Krishna, we can think about how to please Guru, how to please Prabhupada. That will please Krishna. We want to connect ourselves in that way. A realization how to do everything, how to actually use what we've learned in Krishna consciousness. So it begins with the tongue, chanting. We do have to chant. That is the most important bit. We read the books, and all the books will tell us about chanting Hare Krishna. Prabhupada definitely wanted us to chant. So we do encourage the devotees to chant. And when we're chanting, then we will also be thinking that I need to read also, and I have to look. What was that devotee saying in class yesterday? What was the point? What's coming up? And we will want to look, we want to read. So chanting Hare Krishna helps us to understand more the importance of hearing about Krishna and reading Prabhupada's books. It all fits together, you know. If we're properly engaged in Krishna consciousness, you'll see perfect cooperation. The knowledge is there, and the realization also comes along with that knowledge, right? By application of devotional service, we get both knowledge and detachment. So that detachment is part of the realization. That realization comes to keep away from the material energy, to keep away from Maya. Don't go into it. Keep yourself absorbed in service of Krishna. That kind of realization. We realize Maya is very dangerous. To play with Maya, you can get burnt. It's like fire, it burns. Be very careful. So Prabhupada said, devotees, he wanted the brahmacharis, they should put on their forehead like butter, store in a cool place, you know. So that kind of realization, you know, stay in a cool place, stay in the fridge, and that keeps us cool. You're lucky you're in Switzerland, a nice cool place, right? You can stay cool there. But that's a realization which comes about, you know, how to keep ourselves away from Maya, how to keep our distance from Maya, and how to keep ourselves engaged in Krishna's service. So Krishna's in the heart, and Krishna says, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam pritipurvikam. To those who are constantly devoted to me and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. So that understanding, that is the realization. Krishna gives us from the heart. He's actually speaking to us in the heart, and he's telling us what we need to do. And if we don't hear Krishna in the heart, Prabhupada is speaking from his books. Read Prabhupada and you can hear Prabhupada's words loud and clear in the books. And just by reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada said one day you will see Krishna in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. You want to see Krishna? People are eager to see God? Read Srimad Bhagavatam. Just keep reading. One day you will see Krishna there in the pages. So that kind of realization, you should have that. You should be convinced of that. Just keep reading Srimad Bhagavatam and one day Krishna will be there. Actually, Srimad Bhagavatam is Krishna. Of course, there's no difference.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. I think we got so much from your realizations on this topic. Do you have any final closing words, some concluding statements you would like to share with the devotees before we end the interview?
Well, I would just simply like to say that you should never consider that it's a waste of time to read Prabhupada's books or to, in any way, to involve yourself in Krishna consciousness. Rather, it's the greatest benefit to our life. That if we can spend even a few moments in Krishna consciousness, it's the most valuable thing we can do in this human form of life, and it gives us the greatest benefit. So you should not have any doubt about that. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Maharaj. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.